Right, right on. So, and I do remember that part of your message was that because you were not a traditional politician, because you were more of a issues oriented governor, that you would connect with voters better. Now we see Donald Trump with some of these same attributes, but he's connecting, and for some reason you weren't able to connect. What's he doing right? What would you do to achieve what he's done?
Well, it's a totally different set of circumstances, and so I brought with me a record of service. I'd actually served a Democrat as a Republican, which was not well thought of in the primary phase of the campaign. I got in late. I had a record as governor. Some very non-traditional issues for a Republican in terms of gay rights, in terms of the environment, and that's the one thing that Trump does not have. So he's a totally clean slate, and people can put on that slate anything that grieves them.
Republican Party did a postmortem of the general both in 2008 and in 2012, and determined and spent good money on this, and determined that talking about walls and illegals and using these send them all back kinds of rhetorical devices is exactly the wrong thing to be doing if you want to win the White House in 2016. Not that we would expect Donald Trump to listen to anything that the Republican Party would commission as a report, but to hear all the other candidates using the same language, is this a gigantic self-immolation as regards the Hispanic vote in the United States?
We're 15 years behind the times at least. And when you stop to think that politics is a pretty simple mathematical equation, you've got to put together a puzzle, John, that basically speaks to winning enough states where you get the electoral college votes to win the election. That means you've got to build bridges to constituencies and to demographic groups. When you're in a position where you've lost demographic groups, key demographic groups, and you continue now to say things that just drives home the angst and the criticism they've had about your party, I don't know how you can hope then to recoup unless you've got a very special person out there on the stump who's able to put all the pieces back together again in the general election, which is a tough thing to do.
Are you saying the GOP is in danger of becoming the GOWP, the GOUP, the Grand Old White Party?
Well, parties have gone into the trash bin of history. We remember that well from 1856, I guess it was.
The Whigs.
Yeah, the Whigs, and John Fremont ran as the first Republican that year in 56. He lost, but Lincoln then won in 60. Parties are not built to last forever. We're holding on to the old demographic, which is aging very, very quickly, but that's not an election. That's not a demographic that will allow you to win a broad-based national electoral vote.
Because I can't resist, let me ask you before we go, as long as Trump stays in the race long term, the longer he stays in the race, who's hurt more, the Republican Party or Hillary Clinton?
Well, I think the longer he stays in the race, I think Hillary Clinton has her own problems, and she may not remain standing as the nominee at the end of the day. I think it does hurt the big tent Republican Party. It probably closes the drawbridge on those lost demographics that we talked about earlier that need to be brought back into the big tent Reagan Party in order for us to win a national election.
Jon Huntsman, former governor of Utah, former ambassador to China under President Obama, currently chairman of the Atlantic Council. Thanks so much.
Thank you, John.
Coming up next, the Ashley Madison hack has indicated the prevalence of extramarital affairs, and you've weighed in as well.
Yeah, this is PJ from Tarrytown. Yeah, I definitely have been cheated on and have cheated on a partner. I find that it's usually a power trip and insecurity, both causal and effectual.
Have you ever cheated on a romantic partner or been cheated on? And is it more acceptable nowadays? Albany, New York. I cheated on my past partner and found that it stemmed from not communicating my needs and becoming disappointed when my partner failed to fulfill them. I don't think it's more acceptable today. I just feel like it's more accessible. It's easier to cheat, especially with internet anonymity. We examine the new reality of cheating next on The Takeaway.
Support for The Takeaway comes from Lumosity, introducing a 10-minute fit test to challenge memory, attention, and problem solving, with brain games to calculate baseline scores and build a personalized brain training program. Performance can be compared to global averages. Learn more at Lumosity.com.
You're listening to The Takeaway on WHYY, 86 degrees at 12:48. Ahead at 1 this afternoon on Here and Now, former President Jimmy Carter discusses his fight against cancer. And if you've been watching TV lately, you've probably seen a new ad campaign targeting new restrictions on brokers and financial advisors. It's apparently setting the stage for a political fight over the new fiduciary duties on brokers who must put their clients' well-being ahead of their own personal gain. Those developments on Here and Now this afternoon at 1 on WHYY. The afternoon forecast, clouding up, showers likely later today, temperatures holding on in the mid-80s. Count on showers and thunderstorms overnight, low 72, and a rainy day tomorrow, heaviest in the morning, Friday's high 82 degrees. Saturday, partly sunny, humid, high 83. This is WHYY at 12:49.
I'm ready for something new, something for myself, something that I've gotta do.
On Tuesday, a group of hackers claimed to have dropped 9.7 gigabytes of stolen user data from members of Ashley Madison. Very familiar name by now, a website aimed at people looking to strike up an extramarital affair. It's supposedly confidential data, now public. Some upstanding members of the public, perhaps, facing some serious emotional trouble in the next few weeks. Ashley Madison is a very interesting case. It's a very old business model with a very new business platform, the internet, and a claim of some 40 million users. And there aren't really many hotels that could accommodate such an escort service, but just to show you how the issues for Ashley Madison's users and its owners aren't really that new, here's a conversation recalling a scandal from the 1980s. An astute businesswoman by the name of Sydney Biddle Barrows, with a, shall we say, agnostic sense of sexual morality, set up a business in Washington, D.C. and New York that offered fans the opportunity to have a discreet sexual relationship for a fee. It was very successful until the whole thing unraveled because of the police. Here she is with a colleague recalling lessons learned in an interview in the 1990s.
These men are not looking for another relationship. They love their wives. They just want a little variety on the side. And I think that, a woman who's secure in herself and knows her husband really loves her certainly is not going to be thrilled if her husband goes to...
I don't think she should know about it anyway.
Well, I absolutely agree with you. I think if he has any respect for her at all, he will make sure she never finds out.
That's the good thing about your kind of situation, is that the wife really doesn't find out. But if he goes to escort services and little kind of things, somebody might see him and he might be found out, where yours is completely confidential, I'm sure.
Yeah, very confidential.
Very confidential. Right. Well, before it exploded, Ashley Madison claimed it was the most famous name in infidelity and married dating. The site's homepage bragged that thousands of cheating wives and cheating husbands sign up every day looking for an affair, and with our Affair Guarantee package, we guarantee you will find the perfect affair partner. Moira Weigel is a PhD candidate at Yale in film and media. She's also researching a book entitled Labors of Love on the history of courtship and sex. Moira, welcome to The Takeaway.
Hi, thanks for having me.
What do you think of all this? Do you think what was going on in the 80s is exactly what was going on with Ashley Madison? Have things changed in some significant way?
Well, there are certainly changes that strike me, but the first thing that occurred to me just now listening to that was that Ashley Madison is not an escort service. I mean, it's supposed to be a platform for sex between mutually consenting adults. It's not exchanging a fee, so...
Although you do sign up, and there is a fee for signing up.
Right. I believe there's a fee for male users. Why that struck me is it's been rather surprising to me. Maybe it shouldn't be surprising to me, but how viscerally angry the reaction about it is, and how sort of like blatantly gleeful a lot of people on the internet are about the idea of these cheaters being exposed, and the idea that all that information about private figures, private individuals, that those people should be discovered. I was surprised by how emphatically people seem to think that.
Well, let me say, I'm not surprised by blatant glee on the internet, that's for sure. What do you think the difference is between men and women at Ashley Madison? Men their sort of interest in multiple sexual partners is perhaps well known anthropologically.
Yeah.
For women, though, it seems like much of the motivation comes from the problems with the institution of marriage for women, that in many ways, particularly in this era, economically, it's something of a trap.
I mean, I think often of how affairs were conducted or of infidelity in that Victorian era, or even in the 1950s, more recent, the Mad Men era or something like that. And it's very hard to separate from power relations and economic power in a relationship. I remember reading a study a few years ago, and I can't remember who conducted it, but of British couples. And one of the questions these sociologists, I think, asked over the phone of two married women was, if you could afford it, would you leave your husband tomorrow? And some staggering number of them said yes. So all that is a way of saying, if women are more economically empowered and have more economic options, it makes sense perhaps that they'd take some of that prerogative that used to belong to Don Draper or, Mr. Victorian era.
Or if Ashley Madison offers a secret passageway to something that otherwise would require a private jet and some, Saudi prince to whisk you away to some island, it's a completely different situation.
That's very funny. I mean, I was thinking last night about this and how a lot of these mobile apps like Uber or Handy or Seamless are actually just delivering, basically they're taking experiences that were previously affordable only for the ultra wealthy and making them more democratically available, or making it possible for more people to afford them. And I was thinking, is Ashley Madison just like that? Is it that it's really expensive and a lot of work to have an affair, and it's making it more possible for people who don't have the private jet?
So they need a new slogan. Ashley Madison takes all the work out of your extramarital affair.
The Uber for swinging.
Oh, God. We're going to get in trouble now. Myra Weigel, thanks so much.
Thank you.
Myra Weigel is a PhD candidate at Yale and researching a book entitled Labors of Love, due out in 2016, on the history of courtship and sex.
Hi, this is Jack from Council Bluffs, Iowa. In my first marriage, I cheated on my wife. I was immature and stupid. In my second marriage, my wife cheated on me. My third wife and I have been married for going on 27 years. So that's the way it goes.
Hi, this is Missy Dallahan in Austin, Texas. I've been pondering this question lately while witnessing the pain of a friend whose husband ruined her and her 3 young kids' lives by an affair. I've always told my husband I have just never had sex that was so good that I would destroy all the people that I love most for it. I just don't get it. But I've come to believe that the reason people cheat is because of the excitement factor. Hi, this is MJ calling from Nutley, New Jersey. I never physically cheated, but have emotionally cheated on someone. I have had romantic partners physically and mentally cheat on me. I think lack of communication and unrealistic expectations push people to cheat. Not wanting to face or admit something is not working, yet not wanting to be the one to speak up creates a passive-aggressive environment, which is a breeding ground for cheating behavior.
You guys are unbelievable. You are so honest. I just love you all. Your stories of cheating, I sort of hate to ask for them, but it's beautiful stuff. Call us at 877-8MY-TAKE. We'd love to hear about your lives, and we actually do care. And here's something to take with you today. We played some of President Obama's vacation Spotify playlist. You may remember the other day, Miles Davis, Van Morrison, Bob Dylan, some Sinatra, and also that track, La Salsa La Traigo Yo, is by a Colombian salsa band called Sonoro Carruseles, founded in Medellin, Colombia in 1995. They got 14 albums. The band, though, at first thought it was a joke to be on the president's playlist. That song, they say, is one they haven't played in a very, very long time. One of the band members told the Associated Press, quote, "Now everything has changed. In these few days, more people know about us. They want to know who we are, where we come from, and to learn more about our music. For us, it is very important that Obama has put us on the map." Now, the White House's official position is that the president picks his own playlist tunes, period. No other information. But we're thinking of a little business here at The Takeaway, making a website called Presidential Payola, where you send your demo to us, pay us a fee, it'll probably be pretty large, and we'll get it on the president's playlist. Huh? That's a felony. Vince, that's a felony? Oh, all right, never mind. Rate our show. Leave us a comment on iTunes. It helps other users find us. You know how to reach us. 877-8-MY-TAKE. Thanks so much for listening. I'm John Hockenberry. This is The Takeaway.
Support for The Takeaway comes from the Henry Luce Foundation for increased understanding of East and Southeast Asia. The Takeaway's resilience reporting is supported by the Rockefeller Foundation. For more, go to rockfound.org.
Public Radio International.
Here and Now is next on WHYY.
Next time on The Pulse, you're a toddler and you've just been poked in the arm with a bunch of needles. Despite everything those adults are saying, it's not okay.
You did good.
So now that you're all done, shouldn't you at least get a lollipop?
The kid puts it in their mouth and it tastes amazingly good. Things are good.
A pediatrician defending a sweet treat? Is it possible? Find out on The Pulse tomorrow morning at 9 on WHYY.
Get more interesting. Listen to WHYY-FM Philadelphia, WNJN-FM 89.7 Atlantic City, WNJZ 90.3 Cape May Courthouse, WNJB-FM 89.3 Bridgeton, WNJM 89.9 Manahawkin, and WNJS-FM 88.1 Berlin.
Robots have the ability to assist or replace us. Will we control them, or will they control us? On the next Fresh Air, John Markoff, a technology reporter at the New York Times, talks about his new book, Machines of Loving Grace. He'll warn that we're not prepared for this new world and its consequences. But we'll also talk about some pretty cool robots. Join us. This afternoon at 3 and again tonight at 7 on WHYY.
Clouding up, 86 degrees, showers on the way later today, showers and thunderstorms overnight, and rain tomorrow, heaviest in the morning. It's 1 o'clock.
Funding for Here and Now comes from MathWorks, creators of MATLAB and Simulink software, accelerating the pace of engineering and science. Learn more at mathworks.com.
From NPR and WBUR Boston, I'm Lisa Mullins.
I'm Jeremy Hobson. It's Here and Now. Coming up, reaction from Atlanta after former President Jimmy Carter speaks about his cancer diagnosis.
I just thought I had a few weeks left. But I was surprisingly at ease.
Also ahead, North and South Korea exchange rocket fire across their border for the first time in 5 years. How worried should the rest of the world be?
These stories, and you heard it every day from your parents, from your teachers.
I eat breakfast every day. It's my favorite meal. And this starts my day off right and gives me the energy and fortitude to continue on.
But is breakfast really necessary? Coming up, Here and Now.
The news is first. From NPR News in Washington, I'm Lakshmi Singh. Fresh from securing support from its European lenders for a third bailout, a deeply divided Greek government is now facing political turmoil. Prime Minister Alexis Tsipras is expected to call early elections for next month, for which he would have to step down as Prime Minister. John Saropoulos tells WBUR's Here and Now this was not entirely a surprise for Tsipras' Syriza party.
It's been long rumored that since the schism appeared within the ruling Syriza party, in which the far left tore away about a third of the members of parliament that Syriza has, about 44 people, it's been a question of time for Syriza to seek a renewed mandate and to try and reform itself in a more consolidated and unified way.
John Saropoulos reporting. 3 firefighters were killed battling a blaze near Twisp, Washington yesterday. Northwest Public Radio's Rowan Moore Garrity reports evacuations and road closures remain in effect with more dangerous fire conditions ahead.
Okanagan County officials report that the firefighter's vehicle crashed and was overtaken by flames yesterday as a fast-moving fire shifted directions and injured 4 other firefighters working on the ground. One remains in critical condition this morning at a hospital in Seattle. With more than 10 separate fires burning throughout this vast county of grassland and dry forest, officials are expecting high temperatures and shifting winds over the next 48 hours. Governor Jay Inslee has asked the president to declare a federal emergency and will spend part of the day pouring fires in eastern Washington. For NPR News, I'm Rowan Moore Garrity in Omak, Washington.
Former President Jimmy Carter has melanoma in 4 parts of his brain. Molly Samuel of member station WABE reports that Carter will begin radiation treatment this afternoon.
President Carter first announced he had cancer last week, and he explained more details about his diagnosis and treatment this morning. He'll be pulling back from his work at the Carter Center, but he says he's in the hands of God and prepared for anything that comes.
I think I have been as blessed as any human being in the world. Become the President of the United States of America and Governor of Georgia, and work at the Carter Center, and a big and growing family.
Carter is 90 years old. He's being treated at Emory Healthcare in Atlanta. For NPR News, I'm Molly Samuel in Atlanta.
The number of Americans to file unemployment claims is higher for the week, but at less than 280,000, the overall level still reflects strong growth in the labor market. The less volatile 4-week average in jobless claims also reflects solid gains. Applications, which are a proxy for layoffs, are near their lowest levels in 15 years. The Dow is down 268 points, 1.5% at 17,083. From Washington, this is NPR News.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include AT&T. With AT&T, the network is on demand, the office is mobile, and the cloud is designed for high security. Learn more at att.com/focus. And from the listeners who support this NPR station.
Overcast, 86 degrees at 104. Good afternoon. I'm Dave Heller, WHYY News. Pennsylvania Turnpike officials are warning drivers about an email scam targeting thousands of Easy Pass users across the state. As WHYY's Bobby Allen reports, the messages carry an official-looking Easy Pass logo and have duped scores of customers.
It would seem totally plausible that you blew through an Easy Pass toll or that there was a malfunction and the cameras didn't read your pass, right? Creators of a phishing scam would like you to think so. Jamie Arnett of AAA Mid-Atlantic says if you see a Dear Customer message from Easy Pass, don't click, because
within there is a link that is asking users to verify their information, including credit card information.
That's when the bug will capture your personal information and infect your computer with a virus. Easy Pass toll-paying devices automatically draw from a customer's bank account, so there's usually no need to send a message to customers. If there is a reason, Easy Pass says it will use snail mail, not email. An FBI spokesman says authorities are looking into who's behind the scam. For WHYY News, I'm Bobby Allen.
Buses and RVs will fill the parking lots at Philadelphia's sports complex for Pope Francis's visit next month. Organizers say the lots at Citizens Bank Park, Lincoln Financial Field, and Wells Fargo Center will be primary bus parking locations during the September 26th and 27th visit. Transportation manager Go Brown says additional parking locations will be determined by the final number of registered buses. Officials anticipate 10,000 buses bringing 400,000 people to the papal events. Some 1,100 will park in Camden, a 2 to 3 mile walk across the Ben Franklin Bridge from the sites of Francis's public events. The South Philadelphia stadiums are on a subway line with express downtown service. Organizers say registered buses will be permitted on closed highways. Arrivals and departures will be staggered to ease congestion. It's 1:06. This is WHYY.
From NPR and WBUR, I'm Jeremy Hobson.
And I'm Lisa Mullins. It's Here and Now, and we're following developments on the Korean Peninsula today. North and South Korea exchanged artillery and rocket fire, and that renewed tensions and worries in East Asia. We're going to hear more in a few minutes.
But first, let's get to Atlanta, Georgia, where Jimmy Carter held a press conference this morning to discuss his health. The 90-year-old former U.S. president announced last week that doctors discovered he has cancer that has spread. Here he is speaking today at the Carter Center.
I did an MRI and found that there were 4 spots of melanoma on my brain. They are very small spots, about 2 millimeters if you can envision what a millimeter is, and I'll get my first radiation treatment for the melanoma in my brain this afternoon.
Joining us from Atlanta is reporter Sean Powers of Georgia Public Broadcasting. He was at the press conference. And Sean, tell us more about what President Carter said about his health.
Well, he said essentially that the doctors had discovered the cancer earlier this year on his liver. It spread to his brain, and as we know, he's going to start receiving radiation treatment. The cancer on his brain is very small. We don't really know the severity of it, but as of right now, he says he feels good.
Well, and he looked good in this news conference. He certainly looked like he was still, feeling upbeat about things and about his prognosis. Let's listen to President Carter talking about how he's feeling, because he did talk about that as well.
And I'm perfectly at ease with whatever comes. I do have deep religious faith, which I'm very grateful for. And I was pleasantly surprised that I didn't go into an attitude of despair or anger or anything like that. I was just completely at ease. As Rosenberg testified, I think that you have any doubt about my veracity, but I've just been very grateful for that part of it. So I'm ready for anything. I'm looking forward to a good adventure.
I'm ready for anything and looking forward to a new adventure. And this is pretty unusual, Sean, to hear from a former president about his health in this way.
Yes, it is. It has actually been said that, perhaps he's doing this in a way to lend a hand of support to other people who are in a similar situation. But yes, President Ronald Reagan, when he disclosed his diagnosis of Alzheimer's, he did it in a written note. There was Lyndon Johnson actually had a press conference at his hospital bed after having throat surgery. But we usually don't see it in this sort of manner.
Now, Jimmy Carter has, as we know, been very active since his presidency ended in 1981. What did he say about whether he will continue his schedule at the Carter Center?
It's going to shift a bit. He's going to be taking a step back from the Carter Center, still attending trustee meetings. Actually, his grandson, Jason Carter, is now going to be chairman of the board. Jason sort of followed in his grandfather's footsteps a little bit, served in the state senate, ran an unsuccessful campaign for governor. But he is going to be involved to a degree with the Carter Center while he is getting treatment. He was actually asked if he's going to be continuing with the trip to Nepal in November to Habitat for Humanity, and he said it's on his radar. He wants to do it, but if he cannot, his family will go in his place. And this is a guy who's been extremely active at 90. Back in May, he was in Guyana monitoring that country's election. Yeah. He left early, just before the election, because of health reasons, but it's incredible.
Well, he also talked today about the fact that he believes that his work at the Carter Center was more rewarding for him than the presidency. Here he is talking about that.
Well, the work at the Carter Center has been, I'd say, more personally gratifying to me. Because, when you're president, you have a responsibility for over 350 million people and 3,000 members of the armed forces and budgets and Congress and so forth. And I was able to do a number of good things when I was president, for which I'm very grateful. And that was a high point of my life, politically speaking. And I would say that my having been president of the United States, a great country, has made it possible for me to have the influence and contact with people and knowledge that has been the foundation for the Carter Center.
Sean, what's been the reaction around Atlanta and Plains, Georgia, where he lives, to this news?
Very sad, but we know that this is a very resilient guy, as President Obama said after his cancer diagnosis was revealed. So people are very hopeful. Again, going back to his legacy, it's almost like, after you serve as president, how can you beat that? But, some say that his greatest triumph is the work he's done with the Carter Center in the years that followed. Helping ease tensions between North and South Korea, helping eliminate the guinea worm in Asia and Africa, which he's had played a big role in. So he's still going to be going strong, and in fact in his hometown, and where he still maintains very close roots, this is a guy who for more than 25 years has taught Sunday school, and he's still going to continue doing that.
That's Sean Powers of Georgia Public Broadcasting joining us from Atlanta, where earlier today former President Jimmy Carter gave a press conference to talk about his cancer diagnosis. He's starting treatment this afternoon. Sean, thank you.
My pleasure.
Today there's more trouble in the Korean Peninsula. North and South Korea exchanged military and rocket fire, and that forced South Koreans nearby to evacuate their homes and shops. There were no reports of injuries or damage, though, but the incident is a reminder of the tension between the two neighbors. Jim Walsh is here and now security analyst. He keeps a close eye on the Koreas. Jim, we often hear about tit-for-tat spats across the demilitarized zone that separates north from south. How would you characterize what's happening this time around?
I think that is a good characterization. What's troubling about it is it's gone on now through a couple of different iterations. First it was balloons carrying propaganda messages that the North Koreans got upset about, and then the mines were laid by the North Koreans, and the South Koreans were killed as a consequence. That caught my eye.
Full of mines.
Yes,
anyway.
yes. And now then the dispute over this broadcasting, and now shots fired at one of the broadcasting towers. It worries me that there's so many, and it's sort of picking up the pace, but when I step back, I ask myself, well, does anyone really want a war here? I don't think the North Koreans want a war. From a North Korean perspective, this is an especially bad time to be too provocative, because you have this gigantic South Korea-U.S. military drill going on right next door. It would be a terrible time to pick a fight.
Right. So there are about 100,000 U.S. and South Korean troops that are conducting these exercises in the South. They happen every year. They're called the Old Chi Freedom Guardian exercises. And as you said, North Korea is pretty upset about them. The news agency issued this threat after they began. Let's listen.
If the United States wants their mainland to be safe, then the Old Chi Freedom Guardian should stop immediately.
What is the North threatening there?
Well, this happens, the military drills are an annual exercise, and this little set-piece play is a regular feature every year. So we have these exercises, and then they condemn it and say, we're going to attack you, this is a pretext for invasion, we will not tolerate this. And then we have them, and then they happen the next year. So that part is sort of normal, but they would get ticked about it. This other set of things that may be connected, or maybe it's just something else that's going on. The North Koreans seem intensely bothered by some things and not bothered by other things. You accuse them of engaging in criminal activity or other sorts of nasty activity, and they say, it's water off a duck's back. You say they have human rights problems. They got very teased about that process at the UN, and this loudspeakers thing seems to also annoy them. But
let's just fill people in on what that's about, this kind of loudspeaker battle before the shots were fired. South Korea amped up this huge set of loudspeakers along the border and started broadcasting anti-North propaganda, saying, your life is terrible here, life is much better in the South, etc. The government doesn't care about you. This hasn't happened in 11 years, although we should say these loudspeakers have been set up for that long, and North Korea responded with its own kind of speaker anti-South propaganda. So aside from the cacophony and the psychological warfare, can't imagine what it's like to be there, what purpose does this all serve, and how does it fit into these tensions?
Well, they had an agreement to stop this, and I'm sure the soldiers benefited more than anyone else having to listen to that stuff all day. And then it broke down as a part of this last set of tit for tat. And that artillery fire that we referenced, that is really the headline today, was near one of those broadcast towers. And it was pretty much, I think the South Koreans saying they could have hit it if they wanted to, they didn't. So there was a little restraint there. But to this broader question, why now? Very hard to know. Remember, there are other things going on here. In North Korea, the purge continues. There are now some 70 officials that have been removed from office, and in many cases, removed permanently.
Under orders of the president.
Under the young leader. So sometimes North Korea does stuff for internal purposes, as an internal audience. Sometimes it does it because as an external audience, it's trying to create a crisis that leads to some negotiation. Sometimes it's just trying to signal deterrence. It's very hard to know with North Korea, the least understood country in the world. But I would say at this point, it's just sort of more of the same. We should watch it, make sure it doesn't spin out. But it doesn't seem like the escalation is likely.
Okay, and just very briefly, does Washington have any particular moves that it makes when North Korea acts this way, since there are something around 25,000, I think, U.S. troops in Korea?
Yeah, we have all sorts of plans, operational plans, for all sorts of contingencies. What we don't have right now is any political dialogue between the countries. There's no communication. So there are plenty of preparations for if things go bad, but there's no talk to prevent things from going bad.
Between the U.S. and North Korea?
Yes, and pretty much from all the parties. North Korea rejected an emissary from the South recently, so no talking, but lots of mischief.
Okay, thank you. Jim Walsh, here and now security analyst. He's with the Security Studies program at MIT. Thank you, Jim.
Thank you.
You're listening to Here and Now.
convertible car has been a symbol of summer for generations.
The desire for something that's fun, that's enjoyable, that is more than just point A to point B transportation, how can that ever go away?
But the new economics of the car business could make the drop top a thing of the past. Learn why later on All Things Considered from NPR News.
All Things Considered begins at 4 this afternoon. I'm Jack Lepiyars. Just one day after receiving a third bailout package, the Prime Minister of Greece will resign and schedule early elections. Alexis Tsipras was elected on the platform of rejecting more austerity measures. Greece was required to accept new measures as part of the bailout package it received yesterday. One of the top officers at the Army's Ranger School says a decade ago he would have doubted that women could pass the course. But Command Sergeant Major Curtis Arnold says the 2 women who passed, along with 94 men, have earned the respect of every instructor at Ranger School. They're due to graduate tomorrow. U.S. mortgage rates are edging lower this week, with 30-year mortgages remaining under 4%. 30-year mortgage rates dropped slightly to 3.93%, 15-year mortgages down to 3.15%. You're listening to Here and Now. Gawker, Salon, and Vice have all decided to unionize their editorial staffs this summer. BuzzFeed's owner, though, says collective bargaining won't be right for his company. Still ahead this hour on Here and Now, David Folkenflik talks with Jeremy Hobson about why unions are making their way into the new media, and whether Jonah Peretti is right to say that unions would not be good for his employees. Partly cloudy, 86 degrees on Independence Mall, 86 degrees in Wilmington. This afternoon's forecast, increasingly cloudy skies. Showers likely later today. Temperatures holding steady. Falling back to 72 overnight. Anticipate more showers and thunderstorms throughout the night. And a rainy day tomorrow, heaviest in the morning. Friday's high 82 degrees. Come Saturday, partly sunny, humid, high around 83. This is WHYY.
Funding for Here and Now comes from the listeners of WBUR Boston and Geico, offering auto insurance coverage for cars, trucks, or SUVs, and providing 24/7 customer service. More information on auto insurance at geico.com or 1-800-947-AUTO.
This is Here and Now, and it is a great time to be Lily Tomlin. Her movie Grandma opens in theaters tomorrow. She stars a 70-something poet whose road trip with her granddaughter, played by Julia Garner, stirs up memories.
Why does she call you writer? Oh, she's calling me a sellout because that's how I used to make a living. You know, you go someplace, a private college usually, because that's where they have the money. You do readings, you teach a few seminars, and then you leave because you don't have tenure. But how's that selling out? Because I wasn't suffering for my art. But I had a kid. I used to take your mom along with me when she was little.
Lily Tomlin in Grandma. She's also been nominated for an Emmy for playing Frankie on Netflix's Grace and Frankie. The show reunites her with longtime friend James Corden, who she first worked with.
Work of Lautrec. Whenever we went to a museum, whether it was in Paris or Chicago, we would look up the Lautrecs, and he would go and he would study each picture very, very carefully, and also Matisse. So those were some very important people in his life.
There's a video showing him at work. How old was he at the time?
When that was done, he was a mere 85.
You wrote and edited the accompanying catalog, the Hirschfeld Century Portrait of an Artist and His Age, published by Knopf. There are more drawings and paintings in the book than in the exhibit.
Well, people always ask me what my favorites are, and I got it down to close to 400 in the book. And it's hard. There are so many great drawings. About half the book are drawings that have never been in any Hirschfeld collection before.
So what happens after this show is over? Will we be able to see them, or just have the book?
Well, we hope that it will travel. We hope that it will travel.
It will probably travel in one form or another. We've been putting on exhibitions for the last 12 years all over the country and all over the world in Europe. And we have a website where we're digitizing every single thing that he did. And you can look up, it's alhirschfeldfoundation.org, and you can look up by performer, by production, by publication, by date, by genre. And we have about 6,000 drawings up there now. And we're working, literally, we have a young woman right now who's scanning images, and we're getting them up as quickly as we can.
And meanwhile, you can see this exhibit at the New York Historical Society at 170 Central Park West at 77th Street. We'll be there until October 12th. My great thanks to David Leopold and Louise Kurz Hirschfeld for being on our show today.
Our pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Up next, comedian Paul Scheer talks about his various projects, including his new special called Crash Test. And then later, we will find out just how brief some major movies turn out to be when they're edited down to feature only the dialogue spoken by people of color. Listening to WNYC and WNYC.org.
WNYC receives support from Sony Pictures Classics, presenting Grandma, a new film written and directed by Paul Weitz, starring Lily Tomlin as a woman who embarks on a days-long journey of revisiting old friends and old flames to help her granddaughter secure $600. Capital One Commercial Bank, a team of professionals providing customized commercial banking solutions to meet clients' needs. More information available at CapitalOne.com/commercial. WNYC is a media partner of the PBS documentary series POV. Monday at 10 on Channel 13, Point and Shoot. A young man leaves home to find himself. 35,000 miles later, he ends up where he never expected. More at POV.org.
The once Governor Moonbeam with some very real problems on planet Earth.
On this topic, both of climate change and forced immigration, I found the Pope articulate, very authentic and human.
California Governor Jerry Brown on his hot, dry, burning state and his recent FaceTime with the Pope. Next time on The Takeaway this afternoon at 3 on 93.9 FM WNYC.
Paul Scheer is quite busy these days. He currently stars in The League on FX and the ABC sitcom Fresh Off the Boat. He runs his own podcast network called Wolf Pop. He appears in the new Wet Hot American Summer Series on Netflix, and his new comedy special Crash Test presents him and fellow comedian Rob Hewell performing stand-up on a party bus. Paul seems to have hit his stride lampooning some of the more ridiculous things that have crept into pop culture past and present, which includes 2 web series where he recreates notorious moments from the Arsenio Hall show and also MTV's TRL. And he's also parodying hospital dramas on Children's Hospital for Adult Swim. Plus, he's doing a podcast about bad movies that devotes itself to the question that gave it its name. How did this get made? I'm very pleased that all of those things have brought Paul Scheer to our show today.
That's the best, well-researched intro I've ever gotten in my life.
I neglected to say that you're a new father. That must take up a fair amount of your time.
Yeah, it does. It does indeed. I gotta have a reason. I have to pay for all that schooling. I gotta get out. I gotta work.
I read that How Did This Get Made was inspired by the time you and your co-host, your wife, June Diane Raphael, and the comedian Jason Mantzoukas went to see Wall Street 2 together?
Yeah, we saw Wall Street 2, Money Never Sleeps, and it's the most bizarre movie. Wall Street really didn't need a sequel. And I remember the last scene of the film, the camera kind of pans up from like a party scene and balloons and bubbles are going in the air. I'm like, what is this movie? What did we just watch here? Like, because Gecko is a good guy in this movie. He's changed his... It was... I've kind of erased it a little bit from my head.
You've done more than 100 episodes at this point. Do you think you'll ever run out of material?
No. It's unbelievable. I just did a movie with Chuck Norris and a dog. It's a kid's movie about white supremacy. And it goes from having, like, funny, like, kid scenes with a dog to, like, police officers getting shot in their car. It's like, there was no middle ground on this child's movie.
Considering that Chuck Norris is the star, is it for or against white supremacy?
It is against, but it was a while ago, so you don't know. Maybe it's changed.
To give our listeners a sense of what this podcast is like, let's play a little clip from your episode about the movie Toys. But there's a warning to listeners, it contains a spoiler, so put your finger in your ears if you are about to see Toys.
And we find out that Joe Cusack is a robot.
Yes. Total robot.
A robot. She's a robot.
No. I just need people who are listening to the podcast to know.
Just take it in.
The Joan Cusack character has been one of the main characters we've seen eat multiple sandwiches. She's eating sandwiches
with vitamins in them.
Which she did say, though, they go through the system.
Why do you think these types of questions aren't asked when somebody is looking at a script or when a film is in production?
I feel like the movies just get rubber stamped, and then one person chimes in and is like, we should add a little bit more salt. And then the other person's like, oh yeah, but you know, we need a little bit more spice. And then the other person's like, we should put in some onions there. And instead of making a delicious stew, it's a stew that just has so many flavors that you're like, I don't even know, what is this, a curry? Is this a soup? Is this now porridge?
I once asked a director who made a lot of good movies, but a couple of bombs, how the bombs got made. And he said, well, you know, when you're working on it, you're worrying about where the sun is, if the dolly shot went smoothly. You don't see the forest from the trees.
Yeah, well,
and then later it's when the film gets edited together, you realize, oh my God, what have I done?
Yeah, well, and a lot of these movies have amazing directors who, you know, we're huge fans of, but the movie just gets out of control. That was Toys' Barry Levinson, you know, amazing director.
There are other times when you find yourselves entertaining the plausibility of movies like Sharknado.
Well, Sharknado was, I mean, I think it could happen. I think it's a very important movie to get the word out about these potentially horrific Sharknadoes.
Do you consider yourself a connoisseur of bad moments in pop culture in general? Because it certainly captured your attention.
Yeah, I think I'm obsessed with anything that gets the popular, you know, in the popular opinion or whatever. Like, I started my career doing this show called Best Week Ever, and we kind of analyze, you know, scenes from The Bachelor. And when you start to look at anything in that with a microscope, it just gets more fascinating. To me, Arsenio Hall was a show that I grew up on that I love watching, but when you go back now and watch the interviews, they're bizarre. They're so wildly crazy.
You've done two YouTube series on Jash Network. One called The Archerio Hall Show.
Yes.
Obviously, Arsenio.
Yeah.
And in that you recreate famous moments from the Arsenio Hall Show in the early 90s?
Yes. So that was inspired because Arsenio basically was on it before there was internet and anything like that, and people didn't, I feel like no publicist was around when these people were coming on the show. And like Halle Berry sat down with Arsenio, and he's like, oh my gosh, you're in this movie, you're doing so great. And she goes, yeah, and I'm only doing it because 5 years ago I lost in a beauty competition, and that girl who came in first place, she's divorced now, so ha ha ha. It's like, you're a movie star, you're like ripping on this person. It's like, you would never see that happen now. And the show is full of moments like that, these kind of insane moments where celebrities were just saying the most crazy stuff.
Do you think Arsenio brought that out in people?